Thank you, Mr. Rivas. Mr. Marsucci.
Thank you very much. I respectfully oppose SB 1120. SB 1120 is taking away local control from our cities to be able to preserve and protect single-family zoning. I ask for your no vote.
Thank you, Mr. Marsucci. Ms. Friedman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know it's late and everybody wants us to get through this, but I feel this is too important for me not to speak on. The reason that this bill has been very tough for me is because I have voted for, I think, all of the housing bills that have been in front of this House, or pretty much all of them, and very much support the goals of what this bill is trying to accomplish, and believe that a lot of the arguments that have been used against this bill are inaccurate, and in some cases even insulting. However, I will say very quickly that I have some major concerns with this bill having to do with the fact that I have analyzed this bill and I've gone through it and asked a lot of questions. This bill would allow more development in our wildfire areas and in areas that right now we allow single-family houses, but in infill areas are mostly built out, would allow for more development in a lot of areas in Los Angeles, throughout the hills in Los Angeles, where we have very inadequate ingress and egress. Now, I'm not up here to change anyone's mind about this, but I respect the proponents of this bill enough to give the reasons why I can't support it today. My biggest concern, however, has to do with the fact that while I believe that this bill will certainly open up a lot of needed opportunities for renters, and I believe that truly that this is needed to have more housing in a lot of our single-family areas, I am very nervous about what happens when people who want to buy a home for their families are now having to bid against speculative developers given the amount of profit that could be created by what this bill allows. I believe that this is such a radical departure from what we have that we should pilot this before we do it statewide. I think that's prudent. I'm worried about what happens in areas in our WUI areas, such as the Tejon Ranch project, where you have 7,000 units already entitled, lots already subdivided in what is a wildlife interface area. I've gone through this and asked questions, and I believe that that project can turn from 7,000 units into 28,000 units right now by right without review because of this bill. We're trying to develop, but we're trying to do so in areas that are near jobs and near transportation. If you look at what's considered an urban area on the map, it's almost all of LA County, whether or not it's near jobs, near amenities, or whether it's in a wildfire interface area. I'm nervous about sprawl. I'm nervous about what this does to people trying to get into the market, and for that, I respectfully have to not be able to support it today. Thank you.
Ms. Wicks. Ms. Kamlager, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong opposition to this bill. I could go on, but I'm not because the hour is late, but succinctly, it actually compromises the character, and it certainly limits local control. I strongly believe that we need to build more housing. Yes, supply is important. Yes, density works in many areas. But we continue to put forward these bills, and we say that we need affordable housing, and we're living in a state where we actually have been duped into thinking that affordable is paying $12 for a cup of coffee and a donut. That is not affordable. The state is becoming increasingly unaffordable. And so rather than creating a dynamic where you set up essentially an invasion into small communities by developers and speculators, we should actually be having serious conversations about how to develop non-market, price-guaranteed housing, because those are the kinds of units that our teachers, our students, our grocery workers, our cashiers, our working-class families, and Californians deserve, not this bill. With, quite frankly, the kinds of folks that would be able to purchase the land and create these duplexes and quads are more likely than not going to be multinational or international investors, changing the character of our communities. This isn't saying let's have owner builders. Let's have people who are from the community actually building. Let's have people who respect and understand the fabric and the landscape of our neighborhoods across Southern California, across the 54th. Let them participate in this. I could go on and on about 100 plus years ago with Andrew Johnson and 40 acres and a mule and black folks having some land and then not being able to have it, and for centuries, for years, for generations, trying to figure out how to get some land back. And what happens when you have developers calling your phone every day asking if you'd be willing to sell your property, and then having appraisers come in and undervalue your property so that folks can get it at the cheap, and how that also accelerates and exacerbates gentrification and displacement. But instead of talking about that, I'm going to just talk about the fact that why don't we look at least restrictive alternatives, like the inventory of land that the state has that's underutilized or unutilized, the inventory of land that our localities and our school districts have. We could be using that inventory to build. We could be looking at how we're transforming mixed-use light commercial corridors. But I don't think we should be asking for an invasion by developers into communities across the state because we're too lazy, quite frankly, to have more meaningful conversations about how we're protecting communities and finding ways to build housing that people truly can afford. So with that, I have to respectfully ask for your no vote on SB 1120.
Mr. Mathis.
All right, Mr. Speaker, I thought Mr. Mays was ahead of me in line. He had his mic up first. But members, there's a lot of points on this bill that I can agree with. I think we all agree that housing in California, we need more. We need it to be affordable. I think a lot of us agree that families are having a hard time. But this bill doesn't quite get there. I think there's considerations, especially in our valley area, when we look at questions of water accessibility. We have regulations like SGMA that are coming into effect, and every year we get cut off more and more surface water. And we know that housing projects actually chew up more water than housing product. When we get into the conversations of urban sprawl, and we talk about pulling agricultural land off and having housing projects go up, and for all of those of you who love to talk about climate change and the things you want to do, consider this. Agricultural land that these new housing projects would possibly chew up is 10 to 15 degrees cooler than the neighborhoods. So consider that one. Now there's a lot of pieces on this, and I really like the point that was made, because in my community, you know, we have a lot of communities of color, we have a lot of communities that are very poor and disenfranchised, where we're going to have investors come in and offer them money and do things to chase them out so they can split up these homes. There's a lot more that needs to be done. Now, as a husband of a realtor, I'm probably going to hear it when I get home for not being there on this one, because then it's less units for my wife to be able to sell. But, you know, when we look at these things, we have opportunities to get these things right, members. You know, I say every year, you know, fast is slow, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And you all try to speed through these things and throw them together, and you know, this is just more spaghetti thrown at the wall. We know it's not done cooking, and we're slowly watching this bill and other bills just quite not stick. So I urge you members, let's get this one right. Let's get it right for the neighborhoods. Let's get it right for the future of California. Let's get it right so when our children hit that point where they go to buy a home, they can actually buy that nice single-family unit and have a neighborhood to raise our grandkids in. Thank you.
Cunningham. Mr. Mays, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise tonight to just to say that I'm a little disappointed. Mr. Speaker.
Members. Mr. Mays, please proceed.
I'm a little disappointed in the way that we've behaved this year. I realize it's been a pandemic, but the bill before us is a major piece of public policy. And I also understand that the time is running short this evening, and so I'm not going to talk about the merits of this bill and continue to go down this. But the fact is, this is a major piece of public policy, and we should be debating this not for 15 minutes, not for 30 minutes, but for several hours. When I first saw this bill last week, my staff said that I was going to be an aye. Why? Because I supported ADUs just last year, 2 years ago. But this isn't just about adding ADUs. It's not. This will change the fabric of California. It will change the character of your neighborhoods, which is why all of us believe in local government. We believe in local control and decisions made at the local level. That's why a member from Glendale and a member from LA are one way, and a member from Oakland and San Luis Obispo are something different. And it seems to me, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Mays, please proceed.
I just want to make this last point, because we know, and I've heard this from members over and over and over this legislative session, believing that all the decisions that are here are being made from the top down. In fact, I heard from one of my Democratic colleagues yesterday, felt like we were just backup dancers for just a few leaders. And the truth is, it is incumbent upon us as members of this body, to properly institute our role, our constitutional role as being a co-equal branch of government. And a bill like this, I could have supported. I still could support maybe next year, but not this year, because we haven't had the time to properly debate it.
Mr. Nazarian, you are recognized.
Colleagues, I'm going to be brief because we have a few more bills to go. I just want to share something with all of you. In the portion of the San Fernando Valley that I represent, it's roughly about 1/3 of the entire San Fernando Valley. In the entire San Fernando Valley, which 3 of us right here represent, there are over 10,000 houses, single-family houses, that are owned by venture capital companies. Now imagine if all of those properties were subdivided right now and put back onto the market. Can you just imagine the level of congestion and impact? I'm just giving you one small example of what this bill has the potential of doing. So we can talk about how it benefits small mom and pop individual owners, but the real bigger game is the wealth companies wealth management companies that are sitting on thousands of properties waiting for this opportunity to profit. So I respectfully urge a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nazarian. Mr. Obernolte.
Mr. Speaker, I'll be brief. I rise in opposition to SB 1120. And colleagues, I struggled with this bill because Generally, my philosophy is libertarian, and I figure if someone wants to subdivide their lot, if someone wants to build a duplex, why should they not be allowed to do that? But here's the problem with that thinking. If you subscribe to that philosophy, why do we do land use planning at all? Why do we allow local counties and cities the ability to say, we want this built here, we want that built here? The problem with this bill is it's a huge change to land use policy in California. Little that we've done in the last 6 years that I've been in the legislature has the potential to affect land use planning to the extent that this one does, and we're here debating it at 11:30 p.m. at night, the day before the end of session. Colleagues, this needs more baking. I urge a no vote.
Thank you, members. Mr. Rivas, you may close if you wish.
Respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote.